it's happening. We're here, and I'm going to be talking about my favorite books of 2023. Do we need to say anything else? No. Okay. I did make a top 10 list because that's fun and makes sense. But for my number 10 spot, it's actually just filled with my honorable mentions because there are more than 10 books that stood out to me and I really enjoyed and that were great reads, but again, like, that would take a really long time to talk about them. And of course some books do stand out more than others, but you know how it is. But number 10, I'm just gonna say my honorable mentions. I'm not gonna talk about them because that would take a really long time, but all of these books were like 4.5 or 5 stars still, so obviously really good reads that I would recommend. Okay. So, Are Women on the Ground, Heavens on Earth, Chest Story, No One Writes Back, The Summer Book, Drive Your Plow Over the Bones of the Dead, The Memory Police, or is it just Memory Police? I don't know. And Murder on the Orient Express. Good books. So now we get into the list, the official list. First being I Have More Souls Than One by Fernando Pessoa, which is a poetry book, very short poetry book. And is that a surprising thing? Yes and no. I had a poetry book on my top 10 list last year too, so kind of weird because poetry, I'm a poetry enjoyer. I love poetry, but it is hard to find a poetry collection that you absolutely love and connect with. I give a lot of poetry collections 4 stars because you like some of the poems, you don't like others, or you're like, you know how it is. But this one I gave 5 stars, and I remember reading it and really connecting to it and just finding Pessoa's writing style to be so beautiful. It was capturing me. And it made me really excited to read more of his books in general, but also more of his poetry, because I do own the Book of Disquiet by him, which hopefully I will read soon. But yeah, it's hard to explain much about poetry other than it just worked for me, because poetry is so different for every person. Someone else could read this and be like, yeah, I wasn't connecting, I wasn't feeling it, but for me, it was working. I can try and read some like of the lines so you can like get an idea of what's going on. There are sensations felt only by imagining, which are more ours than our own life is. There's so often a thing which, not existing, does exist, exists lingering, and lingeringly is ours and us. Above the cloudy green of the broad river, the white circumflexes of the gulls, above the soul, that useless fluttering, what never was nor could be, and is everything. My number 8 spot goes to Henrik Ibsen, kind of in general. Can I do that? I don't know. But I guess just this collection of plays, 4 major plays by Henrik Ibsen. My favorite was Hedda Gabler. Is that how you say that? I don't know. That was my favorite from this collection, but I did enjoy all of them. And it really, I don't know if it surprised me. I guess it did, because I didn't know what to expect. I'm not a big play reader, and this kind of changed my mind about plays, gave me a new perspective, which is one of the reasons it's on this list, like when a book can really change your mind about things. Impressive. So yeah, I wasn't a play reader. I had read some like Shakespeare or things only for school really, but I picked it up and was like immediately pulled into these stories. And I mean, I just read them so fast because they're plays, you can read them fast. But I was like, whoa, that's crazy. That's fun. And so yeah, I feel like now Ibsen has like opened this whole new door of literature for me, and I have access to so many more books because now I'm like intrigued by plays, and I own some more on my shelf, and I'm excited to try and read those, see what I think. Or maybe it's just Henrik Ibsen that I like plays by. I don't know. But overall, mostly the plays in here are dealing with women's struggles in society during like the 1890s-ish. That's when they were written in Norway specifically because Henrik Ibsen was a Norwegian playwright. And I think his characters are just crafted so well. Like, he can write women. His women characters just make sense. They're real. And it's also maybe just more impressive because he's a classic author. So when you find a man from the 1890s who like can write that way and deal and talk about these issues in such a great way, you're a little shocked. You're like, wow, okay. Yeah. He knows what's up. Oh. Here we have someone saying, a man. A man. I would gladly toil day and night for you, Nora, enduring all manner of sorrow and distress, but nobody sacrifices his honor for the one he loves. And Nora, she claps back. Hundreds and thousands of women have. That's another one. Ghosts. When I heard Regine and Oswald in there, it was just like seeing ghosts. But then I'm inclined to think that we are all ghosts, Pastor Manders, every one of us. It's not just what we inherit from our mothers and fathers that haunts us. It's all kinds of old, defunct theories, all sorts of old, defunct beliefs, and things like that. It's not that they actually live on in us. They are simply lodged there, and we cannot get rid of them. I've only to pick up a newspaper, and I seem to see ghosts gliding between the lines. Over the whole country there must be ghosts, as numerous as the sands of the sea. And here we are, all of us, abysmally afraid of the light. So then we have number 7, Mapping the Interior by Stephen Graham Jones, which is another very short book, horror book, which is actually one of the books I wasn't sure if I wanted to put on this list, but mostly just because I forget things so easily, reading-wise. I have a pretty good memory, I think, but when it comes to reading, I forget books kind of easily because I read a lot. In the year, I've read over 90 books this year. But then I thought about trying to remember how I felt when I read this, and I was like, okay, I should put this on the list. Because I remember I talked about this in one of my videos, and I feel like I said, like, it felt like a punch in the face, basically, but in a good way, in the literature way. And I read this all in one night, because, yeah, really short. But it was impactful. It's just my brain is like, girl, what? Huh? I don't remember that. But I'm forcing myself to remember it. This book is about a young Native American boy. Is there more specific? Blackfeet? But he sees a ghost, the ghost of his father. And it's kind of like a haunting ghost story, but it is also so much more than that. It deals with ancestry, family, generational trauma. This book, I've been reading a little bit of horror, more horror this year, which is exciting. And this was one of the books that I read, and I was like, okay, I really need to read more of this genre. Because yeah, this is one of the horror books that this is the type of horror that works for me, and I think I would really enjoy the more psychological or has some sort of commentary, or the horrors of society and being a human, rather than more slasher horror, this. It's got meat to it. I'm remembering. I was hit with the ending. It is a very powerful read, which again is really impressive for such a short book, and I think that's another reason why this kind of amazed me when I read it. Whenever a short book can have that much power and influence, mind blown. So yeah. Mapping the interior. Okay. Number 6 spot, we have Interview with the Vampire by Anne Rice. Got some annotations on this one. Okay. This book is just so beautiful. So beautifully written, and I think I just want more people to realize that, fantasy is literature, because a lot of times it's not really seen as that. It's not seen as worthy or good. But this is crazy. We're following Louis, a vampire. He's telling his life story. It's an interview. Obviously. Talking about his relationships, about his emotions, the struggles of being a vampire. I actually wrote an essay on this book for one of my classes. So there's that. I mean, I think that should tell you right there. If you can write an essay on a book, a whole essay, there's a lot going on. There's a lot in this book that is discussed, that's a hard thing to do. When you're talking about so many different topics, that's hard. But this book pulls it off. I mean, there's... what are we talking about? Immortality, mortality, morality, loneliness, emotions, religion, questioning. So many things. And it is done in a beautiful way. That is something that I think I found is really important to me when if a book is either good or great, is the writing. Writing is something, it's not just a beautiful thing, right? I mean, it is, but when writing is beautiful, it kind of becomes something else. It evokes emotion, and that's what I found. I think why writing means a lot to me. The great adventure of our lives. What does it mean to die when you can live until the end of the world? And what is the end of the world, except a phrase? Because who knows even what is the world itself? I had now lived in 2 centuries, seen the illusions of one utterly shattered by the other, been eternally young and eternally ancient, possessing no illusions, living moment to moment in a way that made me picture a silver clock ticking in a void. The painted face, the delicately carved hands looked upon by no one, looking out at no one, illuminated by a light which was not a light, like the light by which God made the world before he had made light, ticking, 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 the precision of the clock in a room as vast as the universe. Now we're moving into my top 5, which there's a little bit of a distinction between those and what is coming. All of these books on my list are favorites of the year, but I feel like the top 5 books kind of break into favorite books of all time category as well. Number 5 is Hard-Boiled Wonderland and the End of the World by Haruki Murakami, which I think is my favorite Haruki Murakami book now. Kinda crazy. I don't hear many people talking about this book. Obviously Haruki Murakami is very popular, but this one kinda underread maybe. I'm shouting it out here because to me this book is like it is the magical realism book, and I love magical realism. Haruki Murakami is, I think, the author that got me into magical realism. Like, I think that's when I read it for the first time, maybe. So obviously all of his books are kind of like, they're the it girl. They did it. But for me, this one did it even more. And I think it honestly comes down to just personal preference of a story, which maybe you don't want to hear. Maybe you're like, have a better reason for why it's on your list. But, I don't know, again, reading, subjective. Personally, this worked so well for me. Do I think it will work for other people? Yeah. But will you think it's the best Haruki Murakami book? I don't know. I don't know. For me, this is like almost a perfect book. If it wasn't for Murakami's like just, oh my god. If you know, you know. No, you know. This could have been like, could have been so high. Anyways. But basically, it's always hard to explain Murakami's books because they're all over the place and very weird. But overall, generally, we have 2 perspectives that we're following throughout this book, and they end up intertwining, interweaving, being connected in a way that to me is just masterfully done. And then obviously Murakami's writing is beautiful. One of my favorite writers, like, or maybe my favorite writer, like his actual prose and the way that he writes is one of my favorite. It's so, like, melancholic, quiet. Maybe I'll read on the little, oh yeah, okay, 2 parallel narratives. Maybe that was the right word to use to describe them. Makes sense, okay. Okay, librarians, subterranean monsters. True. Ooh, yeah, they describe it well here. Deeply serious meditation on the nature and uses of the mind. So yeah, to me, just kind of iconic. Just doing it. So if you like Murakami and you haven't read this one, I would recommend. If you like magical realism, I would recommend. So then, number 4, we have The Wind in the Willows by Kenneth Grahame. Again, we got some tabs going on. I read this in January, I think, but I have always remembered the feeling with this one. The comfort. This is very much a comfort read. Like, I remember reading it and just feeling happy, which I feel like is really rare when reading. Not that I don't read, maybe I don't read happy books. But it's different. There can be happy books, but this book is just on another level of, like, joy. for me. It is so beautifully written, like really great nature descriptions and talking about like the importance of being in nature. There's some good representations of like friendships in here as well, just like wholesome. Love that for them. um, there's some like humorous moments, some shenanigans going on, but it just warms the heart. It warms the heart for me. Plus, it's anthropomorphic animals. Obviously, if you don't know, it's about these little animal guys, which I think is fun. I really like that. Animals? Love animals. But yeah, this just has great stuff. Ooh. I also remember at some point in the year, I think maybe it was like, I don't know when it was, but I remember thinking back on this book and being like, oh, I want to reread that book, which I very rarely think. I'm not much of a rereader, but it's just that much of like a comforting, beautiful experience that I was like, oh, I want to read that again. And I feel like this has good rereadability, if that makes sense. I think this definitely would be something I would reread. While the stars grew fuller and larger all around them, and a yellow moon appeared suddenly and silently from nowhere in particular, came to keep them company and listen to their talk. So then, number 3 is To a God Unknown by John Steinbeck, which is one of the most unique books that I have read, which instantly makes it important. And I think after reading this, and I've read 2, I've read East of Eden, The Red Pony, and this, and I'm starting to think John Steinbeck is like a favorite author of mine. I know, crazy. Crazy stuff. But this book, oh, it was a journey. It was a journey. I read it and I instantly knew it was a 5-star book, but I didn't know how I felt about it. I was like, this is 5 stars, but there's so much in my mind. There's so much happening, things to think about. I was really surprised just by the story. But after like time has gone on, I'm just like, yeah, this is a favorite book of all time, for sure. It's pretty short, but packs a punch. Beautiful writing. Again, are you noticing a trend? Writing, very important to me. But this is about a family. They're moving west. It's John Steinbeck. But there's brothers, there's a farm, there is a man who thinks that his father's spirit resides or is this tree, and his other brother is like, that's weird and like totally not Christian, so let me kill the tree. And then famine, what does it say in the back? Something about famine descends on the farm. So it is really about nature, man's desire to control nature, how he can't do that because it's nature. But done in such an interesting way. Endless green halls and aisles and alcoves seem to have meanings as obscure and promising as the symbols of an ancient religion. Joseph shivered and closed his eyes. Perhaps I'm ill, he said. When I open my eyes, I may find that all this is delirium and fever. Since I've come, since the first day, I've known that this land is full of ghosts. No, that isn't right. Ghosts are weak shadows of reality. What lives here is more real than we are. We are like ghosts of its reality. I mean, look at this. Yeah, so another book I feel like is not talked about a lot. I don't know why. Maybe it's too weird. Just a little bit of a weird book, but I like weird things. So now, number two book. I did my best to try and rank them properly, but I don't know. We'll see. But number two. War and Peace by Leo Tolstoy. The most annotated book on this list. Spending so much time in a book, there's something about that. Something about you're almost with them. You're there with them. I mean, this is 1,300 pages. This book is a great example of a long book that does it correctly. You know, I was expecting to feel bored throughout parts of this book, because I'm like, you know, it's One Piece, but I really did not feel bored for, like, the majority of this book. It was mostly, like, this last part that was, what's it called? Epilogue. Some parts in the epilogue, I was like, okay, don't care. But for the rest, basically, of the 1,300 pages, I was not bored. It's the word. Captivated. Oh, that's maybe the word. I was captivated. And it's almost like when you read this long of a book, it's almost like you're a part of the book too. You're just in there. You're hanging out. You're hanging out with them. This book, it just feels so real. The characters are so real, so human. You follow them for so long. You see their lives. There's drama. There's emotion. There's every emotion. There's literally every emotion in this book. Anger. You're angry. You're annoyed. You're happy. You're sad. You're laughing. Like, everything. Everything's going on. You love the characters. You learn to love them. Some, again, you don't like some of them. Some of them are annoying. Just a beautiful story of humanity. And obviously of war and of peace. But that's another thing. This book taught me a lot about the Napoleonic Wars and the invasion of Russia, because I didn't know about that really before. So it's a good historical piece of literature as well. Tolstoy talks a lot about his thoughts on history as well, which I found really interesting. So there's a lot to think about in this book as well. You're kind of, things are thrown at you and you're like, whoa, thinking. Does it deserve its praise? Yes, it does. But I don't think it is intimidating, obviously, because it's so long. But I think that's the only reason this book should be seen as intimidating, because I think it's accessible in its writing and story-wise. So I think more people should, if they want to read this, read it. Because I read it. And like, yeah, I like to think I'm smart. But, come on. I'm a normal person. They all grew silent. The stars, as if knowing that no one was looking at them, began to disport themselves in the dark sky, now flaring up, now vanishing, now trembling. They were busy whispering something gladsome and mysterious to one another. Favorite character? Pierre. Obviously. That's the answer. I think that's the only answer. It's the only thing that you can say. Okay, number one book. Favorite book of the year. Orlando by Virginia Woolf. This book. It has so many things going on in this book. Let's see, what is it about? what is it about? We have Orlando, the main character. He's a young nobleman in the 16th century, but then he lives on for centuries after that, and in the middle has a sex change and is a woman and becomes a woman. Yeah. So obviously a lot of conversations on gender, what it means, what is it real? What it means to be a woman writer, because Orlando is a writer, and a lot of these conversations, I think, are ahead of our time even. Like, people aren't ready. They're not ready for this, but they should be. They should read this book, maybe, I would say. But on top of that, there's a lot about solitude, nature, writing. Obviously, Orlando's a writer. Writing, poetry, so many things that I love in books. That's what it is. And also, because it spans over like multiple centuries, there's a lot about time. This book plays with time a lot, which I love, and it kind of has a magical realism vibe even before like that genre was really established, which I love. We love that. So it's just a really interesting novel. You'll read this and you will always have something to be thinking about, I think. Always reading a line that is beautifully crafted. Virginia Woolf is just an amazing writer, because all of these ideas are shoved in here, all of this cool stuff that I like to read, but it is also done in the most beautiful way. What else can you ask for? That's all you can ask for. I did like annotate it, but I didn't put any tabs in here, which I'm thinking maybe I should go back and do that. It was 1928. It was the present moment. No one need wonder that Orlando started, pressed her hand to her heart, and turned pale. For what more terrifying revelation can there be than that it is the present moment? Same. Like, how'd you write this? Virginia Woolf, how did you write this book? I don't know. It's amazing. And I should read more Virginia Woolf, but I'm still scared. I'm intimidated by her. So. Oopsies. So there is my stack. Can't really see the bottom. There you go. A lot of wow literature is amazing. It can do so many things. Words on a page. How can they do that? They do so much. But that's because words on a page, it's more than that. It's more than that. It's life itself. That's what it is. And life itself, I would recommend them, obviously. I think you should read them. If you also love these books, you're so cool. You're awesome. Thanks for watching and hearing me talk about my favorite books of the year. I feel excited about the year to come. I feel like I'm gonna try and read things that intimidate me, but maybe they shouldn't. I'm gonna try and just go out there and do it. Do the work. Put in the work, read the words. So yeah. Bye.